What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and before you ask, don't worry, I will let you all see my not very beautiful face again. We've just been getting bombarded with like snow and ice, and it's just more convenient to record from home. So, word has reached my ears, and by this I mean I was sent a Twitter DM, that apparently there's a theory floating around out there that this person in Doctor Strange 2 is not Superior Iron Man or Captain Marvel, who basically is being played by Monica and or Maria Rambeau, that instead it's a variant of Kang the Conqueror who hasn't become a bad guy yet. Now, my thought on this is that, okay, if they're gonna do that, then one, that would kind of overcomplicate things, especially because if they were to do that, it would most likely be Iron Lad, and two, what would be the point? Okay, so we're gonna answer that second question here in a minute. Here's the explanation on Iron Lad, and honestly, I'm gonna give you guys an example outside of comics, because if I try to explain Iron Lad from Marvel Comics, it would be ridiculous, because the whole relationship between Iron Lad and Immortus, you guys know him as He Who Remains, and Kang the Conqueror, are basically just, it's the most overly complicated and convoluted, unnecessarily, just, it's the biggest pain in the ass ever in like Marvel Comics. So here's the idea. Let's say you're 50 years old, right? Because I don't know how old you are, but let's say you're 50 years old. And let's say that you're a professional thief. And let's say you've somehow discovered the ability to travel back in time. Now, let's say that when you were 20 years old, that you were presented with two options, and that making either one of these choices would irrevocably change your life. You'd be given the option to travel the world or to go to college. Now, the choice you made at 20 years old was to travel the world, which in turn led you down the path of becoming a thief. And so in order to ensure that you do follow that path, you, at 50 years old with the ability to time travel, go back to when you're 20 years old and tell your 20-year-old self, I need you to make sure that you travel the world when you're given the opportunity to do that instead of going to college. And when your 20-year-old self asks why, you say, because when you travel the world, you'll go through a whole bunch of experiences and then you'll basically become me, a professional thief at 50 years old. The kicker is that your 20-year-old self says, absolutely not. I do not want to become a professional thief. I do not want to do that. And so your 20-year-old self does everything they can to make sure that they don't become you. The funny thing is, no matter what your 20-year-old self does, they will inevitably become you, right? Hence the reason why you went back in time in the first place, to make sure they become you. So here's the thing, that's the relationship between Kang the Conqueror and basically Iron Lad. That Kang the Conqueror traveled back in time, met his younger self, and then said, hey, I need you to make sure that you do the things you're supposed to do in order to become me. And his younger self said, no, I don't want to do that. And then he actually ended up becoming a superhero instead of a supervillain, and then basically does everything he can not to become Kang the Conqueror. That's the whole idea behind there. Now, here's the issue with that. If they threw that into the MCU, it's going to confuse the hell out of the entire movie-going audience, because it already seems like there's just so much happening in Doctor Strange 2 already. If they add in a subplot, this is actually Kang the Conqueror before he becomes a bad guy, right? Then you have to answer the question of like motivation and all that kind of stuff. Plus, it's also predicated on the assumption that people were watching Loki. And one of the things that Kevin Feige has come out and said is that watching the TV shows are not necessary in order to understand what's going on in the movie line of things. It helps, but it's not required. So if they're going to invoke a variant of Kang the Conqueror in Doctor Strange 2, then it would have to effectively be something self-contained and relies on nothing more than the average person's knowledge that Kang is the next big villain. Here's how I think they do that. And I think it's, I'm not gonna say it's a genius thing. And in fact, this theory is probably so far-fetched that it's never going to happen. But as you guys know, when it comes to theory crafting, I don't care if I'm right or wrong. So here's the thing about this, right? Let's imagine, for example, that this whole movie takes place, right? That you have like the events that unfold, however it is they unfold. Maybe it's Dormammu who's manipulating Scarlet Witch. Maybe it really is just Wanda who flipped her shit. Whatever the case is, right? It's just this great big huge threat. Now we do know, just based on Loki, right? Just using that little bit of information. One, we know that Kang the Conqueror is the main bad guy, and we also know the multiverse is back, right? Whether or not you saw Loki is irrelevant in relation to that. Doctor Strange 2 is literally the multiverse of madness. And what will likely be explained over the course of that movie, even if they don't necessarily directly invoke Loki, is that the multiverse is basically growing now. The multiverse is essentially out of control. The events as they transpired in Loki are generally known to the movie-going audience, even if the finer details are not. but basically they would walk away or go into the movie with that information. The multiverse is back and it's spiraling out of control. Why it's happening, they may not know. They simply just know that it is. And so this is when you basically end up having like the formation of the Illuminati as it was brought together by this variant of Kang the Conqueror, right? This however it is that they want to spin this guy. And so what this does is it gives us the Illuminati as a group of multiversal beings who, whatever their motivation happens to be, it doesn't really matter for this theory, but whatever their motivation happens to be, have come together in order to quell the threat of whatever it is that's threatening the multiverse. Scarlet Witch, Dormammu, combination of both, right? Doctor Strange gets involved. They're like, hey, cool, thanks, Stephen Strange. Here are the things that we have to do in order to win. And Doctor Strange basically helps them, right? He working alongside the Illuminati as well as any other beings that he comes across, right? So like America Chavez, so on and so forth, that they all basically end up coming out on top, right? That basically like the day is saved. Now, you get to the end of the movie, possibly even a post-credit scene, right? But you get to the end of the movie and this Kang variant, right, meets with the rest of the Illuminati and basically tells them like the threat's been defeated, right? Like the day has been saved, the path is clear. Now, the rest of the Illuminati basically deactivate their image inducers. And they're not the Illuminati. The Illuminati never existed in Doctor Strange 2, right? It was a ruse. The Illuminati is the Council of Kangs. And the reason why this was done is because despite what Kang is capable of, being able to travel the multiverse and all kinds of cool stuff like that, Kang does not have the power to defeat somebody like Dormammu or even Scarlet Witch. They don't have the power to do that, right? He does not have the ability to do that. The reason being because Kang the Conqueror is a technological guy. He's not a magical guy, right? He's a guy that basically uses technology to travel around the multiverse. So he's got like super advanced weapons and different things like that. But I have a hard time believing that a guy running up on Dormammu with like, a phaser gun or like photon torpedoes is somehow going to be able to defeat that guy. And so because of that, what Kang needed is somebody who is comparable to Dormammu in terms of power, or someone who's overcome Dormammu in the past, possibly even has the ability to defeat the Scarlet Witch, basically a concerted effort among magical beings. And what you basically end up realizing is that the entire events of Doctor Strange 2, right, not necessarily like Scarlet Witch losing her mind, but like Doctor Strange stepping in, the battle that unfolded, the defeat of like Dormammu, Scarlet Witch, or whatever it is, it was all being manipulated behind the scenes by Kang the Conqueror in order to remove an obstacle from his path, in order to ensure that like if it really is Dormammu and the return of the multiverse means all these different variants of Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, who can now be controlled or possessed by Dormammu in order to seize control of those universes and expand that sphere of influence, that this expansion can basically be stopped and it can ensure that the Council of Kangs can basically rule the multiverse. Now, obviously, there's a million holes in this theory, but here's the reason why, assuming those holes can be patched, here's the reason why I think that would work. The reason being because of the fact that what it does is it introduces Kang the Conqueror. It gives us our first look at Kang the Conqueror in Doctor Strange 2, which would make the most sense given the fact that Kang is a multiversal being, that Kang has a desire to conquer the multiverse, that He Who Remains from Loki told us that it wasn't just one Kang doing it, it was a group of Kangs, it was multiple Kangs, so basically the Council of Kangs. So it gives us that perspective, and it also does not make Kang the main overarching villain of the movie. It doesn't give us so much about his character. What it does is it gives us just enough to realize how dangerous this guy is. That the danger of Kang the Conqueror does not lie in his desire to get the Infinity Stones and blink out half the life in the universe for reasons that make sense to no one but himself. That the danger of Kang relies in the fact that one, you never know if it's Kang that you're dealing with, and two, the guy tricked the multiverse. The guy literally duped the multiverse into essentially fighting a war for him, and then winning that war for him, and then clearing the path for him to conquer the multiverse, all the while the heroes being blissfully unaware of that fact. That's the danger of Kang. That is this, like, literally you would walk away from that like, holy cow. Like, the thought that I would have coming out of that is, what hope do these heroes have, right? Like, they're used to fighting like the Chitauri coming from space, or Loki, who's funny but kind of a dick and can like trick people from time to time on like a small level. But fighting a guy who can trick the multiverse, without anybody being aware of the fact that he is doing that, that's a whole different beast. That's a whole different level of deception, right? So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. I know this video is shorter than most of the videos that we make, but let me know what you guys think down in the comment section, right? Because here's the thing, even if this theory doesn't come to fruition, and honestly, I don't care whether it does or not, what I think this would do is really give us a great depiction of just how dangerous Kang can be and how far his reach is and how capable the Council of Kangs are, right? I think it would be pretty badass. I think it'd be pretty amazing. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.